My goodness, we have pressure at every turn, and we're going to talk about this pressure that we're all under. So I want to thank you for being with us this week. I hope that no matter what kind of pressure you're going through, that today will be helpful. So thank you for joining us on this journey. Whether you're at one of our campuses here today, Nixa here in Springfield, you're joining us online. Great to have you with us as we continue this series, 1,000 minutes. Now, 1,000 minutes is all about the average amount of time we're awake during the day, give or take, your season of life, a few hundred minutes there, but you got about 1,000 minutes to make something happen. And so that's what we're focusing on. How do we leverage that? Our series has been all about that, and today we're going to talk about this idea of pressure. Now, top of your outline, if you're an outline absorber, a note taker, here's where I'm kind of launching off, is the idea that pressure is neutral. I wrote it this way, that it can burst a pipe or shape a diamond. Pressure is neutral. It can either burst a pipe. Okay, that's not a good thing, especially that pipe's in your head, anxiety, or it can shape a diamond. It could forge something. It could create something within you that's got value. We've all had pressure, and we've all been shaped by that pressure. The goal today is not to eliminate pressure. Though if we were bottling that up, I think we can sell that for a decent amount. But the goal today is to walk us through some helpful angles of what do we do when we got pressure. So here's what I'd like us to start with. How many of you have remembered a season of your life where you were overwhelmed in an area? Raise your hand if you've ever been overwhelmed in an area. Okay? It's easy to be overwhelmed, because our culture seems to value busyness, right? Like when someone asks you, maybe today when you were in a lobby or you ran into a coffee shop or something, maybe someone said, "How you doing?" And your first response is good, like, "I'm doing good, I'm fine," or "busy, it's been busy." Like, have you realized yet that the last season has always been the busy season? And this season is a busy season, but the next season is the season where it slows down a little, right? That's how we talk. Like, it's been a busy season, but the dust is going to settle a little bit, and looking forward to a little slower pace. We've never hit that slower pace, right? And so a lot of times that pressure just keeps coming, and we seem to value that in our culture. Like when we see someone who looks super successful, right? And we're looking at them, and this is what we think. We don't say it, but we think this, like, man, that dude looks slammed. I bet they're super busy. I bet they're going from back to back to back to back meetings all day. I bet they work over 70 hours a week. I bet they never see their family and never have time for hobbies. What a lucky sucker. Look how successful they are, right? They're slammed, they're busy. Like, we don't want to be the person they say, "What'd you do last week?" Nothing. Just a lot of Netflix, right? We don't want to say that. Have you ever, I hope it's not just me, you ever have someone else from the family come home and you you hear the garage door open, you're like, "Oh my word, I'm still on the couch." And all of a sudden you scramble and make yourself look productive, and you hope they don't say, "What have you been doing?" Right? Just research, So we got to maximize our time, right? They say that if you spend 10,000 hours at anything, you become an expert, right? 10,000 hours. That's 3 years of dedicated time. You can be an expert in Spanish, if you rock your time. You can be an expert in art. You can be an expert in Netflix. I'm telling you, everything is possible, but we got to manage this pressure. And so what happens is we have this busy culture, and some of you, you're in the season of family life. You got the minivan with the stick figures on there and all that kind of stuff. And so for you, you're just having to remember, is today the day I'm picking up the kids in my carpool, or is my neighbor picking up the kids? And you don't want to be that neighbor that forgets to pick up the neighborhood kids, right? And so you're like, okay, I got to pick up the kids from school, and then I got to get my oldest to karate practice, and then I get the next one over to a basketball practice, and then the third one, man, a little toddler, we're just going to go to Chick-fil-A and chuck them in the playpen, and I'll have some chicken nuggets and sweet tea, praise the Lord. It's going to be a great time there. And then you're like, oh my goodness, got to go pick up the kid from karate, and then go pick up the kid from basketball, and then what did I do? Oh no, I left the kid at Chick-fil-A, and so you got to go back. You're like, okay, and then you come home, and you got the expectation, you got the stress, and everyone else has got it going on. On Instagram, you see what they're eating. You're like, what? It's got twice the color, half the calories. What? I've been eating Frosted Flakes for 5 days in a row, and for dinner, and you get I don't have what it takes. Maybe your kids are like, hey, we want to do this. Your spouse is like, we want to do this. How come we never get to do it? And you're thinking, okay, overwhelmed. And I was reading something that even when we relax, we don't relax. I read this last week. I read this stat online, and it says that 60% of Americans, while they watch TV, are also multitasking and online doing something else while they're watching TV. I read that while I was watching the Chiefs game last week, and when I was like, what? That is crazy, right? How many of you are like that? When you're watching TV, you're also doing something else. Because we used to just watch the news, right? And the news was once a day. Like, you don't want to miss the 6 o'clock news because you want to know what happened. Now you got news 24/7, and not only do you watch the news, you watch the crawler underneath the news while they're talking the news, while you're online looking at and we're overwhelmed. And you can't even watch your television shows without missing something because we don't want to relax. And I think that's absolutely rude to television to do that. So I would encourage you, make eye contact with your TV and focus on what they're doing. Because if you don't, you're going to miss something, and then you're going to be the person who's saying, what did I miss? And then everyone else is going to miss something trying to catch you up on what you missed. The other day I was watching This Is Us, and This Is Us, you got to pay attention. Because you don't know, what era are we talking about right now? What life, what season of life, all this. And so it's a lot going on. But I dropped the remote. I looked down for probably 20 seconds. I looked back up, and everyone's crying over donuts. I'm like, what did I miss? And I realized I dropped the remote, and it changed the channel, and I was watching Biggest Loser. But it was crazy, right? We get this. It's like a go, can't relax, overwhelmed. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is, what do we do when we are whelmed overly so? Okay, what do you do? What do you do? Because we all got different areas, whether it's financially, man, I don't know. You get the bill in the mail, and you're like, I forgot about that one. I wasn't planning on that. Or you get an unexpected something, or physically, you're like, man, I don't have it. I'm wrestling with something, and I just don't have it right now. Or a family situation, a work situation. We go in and out of that. We can't alleviate that, but what we can do is we can leverage it, and we can handle it in a way that I think will be helpful. So as we walk through this together, wherever your season of life is, and you're overwhelmed, I just want you to breathe. I want you to know that there's some things that we can bring to the table. We're going to look at a scripture that happened 2,000 years ago. It's in Luke chapter 17, about 10 guys, and they were lepers. Now, we're not very familiar with leprosy in our culture as much. So let me give you a little context of what that meant back then. Sometimes, if you were someone who came to Sunday school as a kid, and you had flannel board or something, you remember stories of lepers, they look like they're giving you the shaka sign, but it's just they don't have fingers, right? They're just they fall off, and you're a 7-year-old in Sunday school, and that's what you're learning at church. You gotta don't sin or your fingers fall off or something like that, right? But leprosy back in the day was believed to be this catchy, contagious disease, like the coronavirus type of vibe for that day 2,000 years ago. And it's okay, if you have leprosy, I don't want to touch you or get near you because I don't want my fingers to fall off. And it wasn't like that. I mean, they would ultimately have limbs and appendages fall off, but what it was, because it was a nerve. Leprosy is a nerve disorder, dysfunction, where the nerve goes dead and you can no longer feel pain. That's what it is. And we have it today. We don't call it leprosy as much in the first world culture. There's different things about nerve issues. But bottom line is this. There's a great book talking about the gift of pain. And rarely do we think that pain is a gift, but it's actually God's gift to us. Think about it. Pain is God's gift to you that something is going wrong right now. I should stop doing said something, right? Let's say you're at the kitchen and you have leprosy. You have no nerves that tell you when things are hurting. And you're just leaning against the stove because you forgot to turn it off. And you're like, something's burning. What's burning? My hand, You could think, oh, that's kind of cool because you didn't feel it. But I got to tell you, God's gift to you is for you to say, ooh, that's hot. I got to stay away. When you're trying to tighten a screw, and you get to the spot where it's super tight, but it's not as tight as you want it to be, and there's that pain, there's a lot of tension in my skin right now. If you didn't have that, you'd be like, I'm close, and I'm bleeding. I don't even feel it, right? You're invincible. Well, that is something that back in the day, leprosy is they would hurt themselves, cut themselves, not really notice it because they didn't feel it, and then it'd become infectious, and there would be diseases and infections that could become contagious. But so the whole culture, in the Old Testament Bible, some of the Old Testament Bible, you're like, what? This is kind of weird, because it's like city code for some of it. So they're trying to keep a bunch of humans alive, especially as they're traveling through a desert on foot. So they have some code, like where you go to the bathroom, what kind of things you can pick up on the road, kill and eat, different kind of things that isn't necessarily like a spiritual deal as much as it's let's try and keep as many of you alive as possible deal. And one of them was when you have these diseases, this could become the bubonic plague in a hurry. So what we got to do is you've got to separate yourself when you're going through this. So if you've got some of these infections, you got to separate yourself or people are going to get it. Well, people turned it into this major moral thing. Like if you've got leprosy, you are cursed by God and you have no value and you're out of here. And they would make them wear this cowbell. And so when they walk around, if people heard the bell, that was the warning, watch out, there's a leper. And so what we see here is in Luke chapter 17, there's 10 of these guys. And I don't know their story. I wish I knew the backstory. Because you don't get leprosy overnight. But can you imagine that culture, the most feared thing that would take you out in a communal environment? We're talking the Near East 2,000 years ago where you lived with grandma and grandpa, you lived with everybody, right? And community is so important to that culture. And all of a sudden you realize one day, man, I can't feel. And you don't want to say anything. You can't even say anything to your spouse. And for weeks, months, years, you're trying to fake it, but you know this is a growing issue. It's going to cut off your finances. It's going to cut off your friends. You will never hug another human being again. And so you know it's a matter of time before you have to say something to your family. They give you the bell, and now you're kicked out of community. 10 guys. Now, interesting tidbit on this story. These guys have no business talking to Jesus because they're unclean. You're supposed to yell, unclean, unclean, watch out, you're going to get it. And people would be like, oh, no, you're unclean. I don't want to become unclean, because if they believe this, the culture of that time, if you are clean and you touch unclean, unclean wins and clean becomes unclean. Think about that issue of your God in the bod, Jesus Christ. The thing that you got going for you is you are clean, right? So the one thing you ought to avoid is anything unclean. And it went against the whole paradigm of religion and value and people. And so what they did is they said, okay, we're unclean, we got to see Jesus. Luke chapter 17 says it this way. It says, as Jesus was going to a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and they called out in a loud voice, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. Circle the word pity. When Jesus saw them, he says, go show yourselves to the priests, and underline these 4 words. And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. He happened to be a Samaritan. Jesus asked, were not 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, rise and go, your faith has made you well. Ten people have the audacity to show up at a place they have no business being, where humans were, where Jesus was. Why did they do it? There had to have been some campfire in this leper community where they said, did you hear that story about that guy? He healed a blind man. He healed a deaf man. He healed a dead man. Do you think he can heal a leper? They say he's God. They're like, there's no way. We're not allowed to even go near. They're like, if we stay here, we're going to die anyways. What are they going to do? We've got to see. And one morning, 10 of them stumbled their way, calling out, Master. And guess what they wanted? Pity. And I'm like, that's messed up. That's like the That's like the cultural values expressing themselves. They didn't even have the dignity to believe they were going to be healed. They just wanted pity. And Jesus is not a God of pity. He's like, you're looking for pity. I'm telling you, I got something so much better. You're overwhelmed in every area. And I think there's some lessons we can pick up. And I know that's 2,000 years ago, and I know you probably don't have Hansen's disease or leprosy. But I bet there's an area of your life that needs some function. And here's a few things they did right that we can learn from when you're overwhelmed. The first is this. When you're overwhelmed, choose the best place. When you're overwhelmed, choose the best place. Put yourself in a position. These dudes somehow says we've got to get to see Jesus. We don't even know if we believe in it, right? I don't know their religious background. One of them's not even a Jew. One of them's a Samaritan, which is like they believe in that culture pagan. You don't share belief with us, therefore we're not going to associate with you. And here is this guy who doesn't even know how to put Jesus in his theology based on a rumor and a string of hope says, can you help me? And I think there's something there. When you're overwhelmed, be careful where you sit. And I'll tell you why. It says, I wrote it down this way, where I sit determines what I see. Where I sit determines what I see. And when you're overwhelmed, there are a lot of open seats out there, but not everybody sitting at the table has a functional way for you to have a next step. Everyone who has a voice should not have a vote. There are people and places in your life where if you sit there, it ain't gonna help you. When you're down and overwhelmed, hanging out to have another drink at that bar might not be the best place for you. When your marriage is on the rocks, finding yourself in the arms of a consoling other person is not the best place for you. You've got to be careful when you're overwhelmed not to grab onto something else. Even if it makes emotional sense, it might not make logical sense. Now, Leanne and I are not from this area. We're from the Northwest. And so the Ozarks is beautiful, love it, new. And so one of our favorite things to do, and we try and do it every year, is go floating on a river. Because in the Northwest, you don't like when you go to a river, it's like helmet, whitewater rapids, and it's like crazy, okay? And so here, like we were surprised. So we went down, we took a bunch of staff and went down to the Buffalo River in Arkansas. Anybody been to the Buffalo River? It's amazing. It's like, it was, especially not being from here, I'm like, this is right off the set of Deliverance. I'm like, this is awesome, scary, cool. We're vultures following us. It was, but blackberry cobbler at the town when you get, it was awesome. And so we go on this deal. Now, here's the deal. When you do a raft with a bunch of people, it's just a bunch of people and whatever, right? But when you're in like a canoe, like there's like two people and you gotta like get along really well. I think every like engaged couple should go on a canoeing trip, right? And so Leanne and I, we get there and so we had brought our girls with us and a bunch of the staff. And so like Janaea, our oldest, Janaea and I are kind of cut from the same cloth. We're just like up for the adventure. Let's do this. Let's have fun. And we're not very particular in how we do it. We just want to have fun. Sydney and my wife Leanne, they are also cut from the same cloth, but different cloth than what I was made from. And so they are particular about everything. And so you can imagine if Leanne's frustrated with me, I don't want to be within striking distance when she has an oar in her hand. So I'm like, okay, how about this? Since it's 2 and 2, I'll take Janaea and Leanne and Sydney will go. And so Janaea and I, we're just having a blast. We're just, just messing around. And it's like, it's not rough rapids. It is like help the water try to get, right? Everyone sit up and walk. Okay, now let's go. It's not harrowing, okay? And you're just trying to avoid all the drunk people passing, and all this stuff. And so then we get to one spot where you're turning a corner, is just around the river bend, and we get to this, and we can see that there is a current that if we get to the far right and we're going to turn left, and we just get going, that thing's gonna shoot us across the corner. So Janae and I are like, let's do this is awesome. And so we go to the far right and we pick up as much speed as possible, and it shoots us around the corner, and we're like, we were going like 4 knots. It was awesome. And then, let me show you a picture of Leanne and Sydney. Okay, they were behind us. And you can tell by this picture, I'm not a detective, but they're smiling and they're dry. So I can tell you when this occurred. This happened right before the river bend, okay? So Sydney's in the front and Leanne's in the back. And there are a couple chefs in that kitchen right there. And so we're like, okay, we get past this bend and we're like, okay, now this will be fun. Let's just watch them. Okay, let's see how this is, because this is gonna be great. So we turn around and watch them, and they're not thinking they're not strategically navigating this thing. So they're seeing the river bend and they freak out about it. They're like, oh, there's current coming up. And they're starting to freak out, and they don't know how to use the paddle, but they just know that they should. So they're paddling a lot and they're not getting to the far right of the current. They're right in the middle. They're trying not to get, and I'm like, this is awesome, because the current's gonna take them in towards shore, and there's this huge tree that's like leaning out over shore with this a big limb right by shore, and now they're picking up speed, and they're headed towards this tree. And I'm like, this is amazing. A couple of other things you need to know. Leanne's not super tall, so we'll start with that one. Second thing is she's deathly afraid of snakes. In Washington, we don't have snakes in the water. In Arkansas, they're like, the whole time. They're like just hanging out all weekend in the water. And she just like, there's snakes in the water. So she will not touch the water because she's afraid of snakes. And here she is. Okay, so here she goes. They're going fast right towards this tree. And I'm like, okay, this is bad. So Sydney, she's first. So as the tree's coming, she doesn't know what to do. She just ducks under the canoe. And the tree's like scraping right over. And she pops up as she passes the limb. And she's fine. Leanne doesn't know what to do, and as the tree's coming, she doesn't want to get knocked out into the water. So, no joke, her instincts kick in. She leaps out of the canoe and grabs a hold of the tree with her arms and her legs wrapped around the limb, and the canoe slides on right by Sydney, popping up by herself, like thinking, where's mom? Did the rapture happen? What is going on here, right? And then Leanne is just hanging on this tree, screaming like crazy, just screaming because of snakes. And so as we took this picture and watched it, I couldn't find that picture. I'm sure she deleted it. We had another staffer go and help her out with water, and she's getting there. He's from here. He's like, what are you doing in the tree? She's like, I'm afraid of snakes. He's like, where do you think the snakes come from? I want you to understand is, listen, logically it doesn't make sense. Emotionally, exactly what you want to do emotionally, but sometimes the thing that emotionally you're hanging on to is not the logical next step for health. And I promise you, there are times when you're overwhelmed, you don't know what to do, you make a snap decision, and then you grab onto something that feels safe right now, but it might not be safe. And I promise you, you can't out-earn the void that you have with God. You can't out-activity the void you have for God. You can't out-drink the void you have for God. You can't out-shop the void you have for God. You can't out-eat the void you have for God. You can't out-sex the void you have for God. You can't even out-Super Bowl the void you have for God. What you got to understand is I've got to put myself in the right place. When you're overwhelmed, the biggest temptation is there will be all sorts of things that invite you to hang out. And if it's not the right voice, if it's not the right influence, when you're overwhelmed, it could be a life-changing negative experience. Choose the right place. That's why we talked last week is get some good resources in your life. Get Right Now Media, get First 15, get these different apps, get them in your life. The second thing is this: we got to not just choose the best place, we got to choose the best perspective. And that's why I like to see these 10 people got healed, and then they came back. Well, no, one of them came back, 9 of them didn't. We got to choose the best perspective, and I want to look at the perspective of that person. Actually, I forgot an outline, and I'm going to get a lot of emails, so let me save my inbox. Okay, so if we go back up, where I sit, why you got to choose the best seat? Where I sit determines what I see. And if I'm sitting at the table with people who are not helping my marriage, I'm going to start seeing the wrong things about my marriage. When I'm sitting at the table, when I'm like overwhelmed, and I decide, like financially, I decide today's a good day to go test drive some cars. The cars don't even smell like family yet. They're amazing, like they're new. That's not good. Where I sit determines what I see. And then you gotta choose the right perspective, because what I see determines who I'll be. What I see determines who I'm going to be. I've got to have the right perspective. 10 lepers. 9 of them were like, cool, my life is restored. One of them says, wow, my life was resurrected. I thought I was dead, and now I'm alive. 9 of them said, I was healed. One of them said, you healed me. Choose that perspective. I got to be honest with you. You're going to be overwhelmed. Thanks for coming to church today, right? You're going to be overwhelmed. Might I propose, when you're overwhelmed, choose how you'll be overwhelmed. Instead of being overwhelmed with fear, anxiety, suspicion, depression, what if you say, I'm going to be overwhelmed. Here's how I'm going to be overwhelmed. Gratitude, mercy, generosity, joy. Let me be so overwhelmed with joy that it just leaks out. It leaks out because of what Jesus did in my life. Now I'm going to be overwhelmed, so I'm going to be overwhelmed on this side of the equation. And I promise you, have you ever met a life giver like that? That they just leak out that joy, that hope, that life. And when you do that, it's because they've chosen to sit at the right place, to see the right thing, and now it impacts who they are. And so when's the last time you were guilty of being overwhelmed with generosity for your family? And overwhelmed with joy for your family, and overwhelmed with gratitude towards Jesus. And maybe you were going through a physical thing, and that could make you overwhelmed, like I've got this adjustment in my life and I don't know what to do, but you chose instead to be overwhelmed that you have another day that you can fog glass. And you're like, I don't know what my purpose is today. A lot of people thought I'd be done by now, but I ain't, and today it's on, right? I'm gonna do this thing. When you choose the right place and choose the right perspective, it'll impact who you see. And what you'll become. And so here's another thing that we can write down on this is 2 people can see the same thing differently. That's why we have people called counselors. That's why we have people called judges. 2 people can see the same thing differently. It's interesting, 9 people saw it one way. One person was like, I've got it. And so we have to be able to see what God's doing. So choose a perspective. So choose the best place, best perspective, and then choose the best priority. A couple weeks ago, Chris Torres was talking about priority, and I think that's a great message. If this is your hot spot in this area for this message, go back and absorb that message again, because that's a great one on priority. But let me share this with priority, is when we choose the best priority, it comes down to this question: who am I serving today? And so I made an art project, and enough to make most 3rd graders jealous. Okay, so I got a picture of this art project that I want to bring up while I set this up, so I could show you what I did. I made these nesting dolls, the order of who we're supposed to serve from greatest, biggest to smallest, okay? So what I have is Jesus. Jesus is the number one there. When I wake up in the day, I ought to serve him first. And then you're going to see next is my wife, Leanne. So I believe that outside of Jesus, when I wake up, I need to say, okay, today I choose to serve Jesus. That's my goal. If I serve him well, I serve everyone else best. So I got to serve him well. Not so I can not sin as much, because that's my purpose. That's my priority. And then, and this is what I always say, I got to serve my family. And I always told my girls growing up, I was like, listen, you're not my favorite. Your mom is, okay? She is. She was here before you, and I'm going to hang out with her a lot longer than I hang out with you. So I love you, just not as much. So that's just how it goes, okay? And so, and I know that's kind of morbid and all that kind of stuff, but if I'm loving Jesus well and loving their mom well, they feel the love, okay? They love them well, right? They're loved well. And then this little upside-down gourd, okay, is actually supposed to be a light, because we're to be the light of the world. I ought to serve those around me. Love God, love my family, love others. Serve them well. Figure out a way to shine a light in some darkness in my community. I've got to do that. And if I'm doing this well, this will become natural. Then we all got a job. I actually work at a church, okay? So I put my church logo here. You insert your logo or whatever it is that takes up your major time, paycheck or not. What is your major focus during the week that gets stuff done to help provide all that kind of stuff is I've got to serve my church well. If I don't do that, it's going to make it harder to serve all these other things well. But ultimately, this is my priority. And I got to say, as much as I love the church, love my family more. I do, right? And I don't feel weird about it, because if I love my family well, you're not going to feel a deficiency of my love for my job either. And then this last one, I know you're not going to be able to see it even on the picture. It's me, okay? This is me. It just says M-E, okay, right there. That's and here's the deal. I want to serve me. I do, okay? And there are times where if I do this well, I never get to this sucker. But guess what's crazy? If I do these well, I don't feel like I'm deficient. I feel like, man, I'm getting everything I need. It's called purpose. Now, but that's not the way most of us roll, so I did another art project. Here is a picture of how most of us do it, okay? So I started with me, okay? If I wake up in the morning and say, good morning, beautiful, how are you today? I exist to serve you, whatever your needs are. I don't care how outlandish they are, I'll figure out a way to serve you because you're the most important person to me, okay? If I did that for me every day, and we don't like to say it, but if we live like that, that's pretty sad. And then secondly, my job. So I put, for here, it's North Point, but you would put your job, okay, whatever that would be for you, and then say, okay, I want to do good at job. And because if I do good at my job, then I can provide for my family and all that kind of stuff. And then I say, okay, I've got my spouse there, I've got my kids there, and then I've got this little guy. I don't know if you can see, if you saw the picture, but this is Jesus, okay? I got the cross here. So if I wake up every day and saying, today I exist to serve you, and then I really need to do a good job at my job, and that's like the second most important thing, and it's important because that's how I am able to do everything I want to do. And then guess what's happening? This person here is like, hey, don't you love me? And you're like, yes, why am I here? Because I love you, figure it out. Look at all these things I'm doing for you. She's like, I don't feel that love. And you're like, I don't get it. And so now you're like, nobody understands me. I need to go do my thing because you guys are idiots. And you know what I'm saying? I'm playing with dolls. Look at me. Okay, so what happens is, and then your kid's like, hey, everybody else's dad does this, or how come we can't da-da-da? And you're like, listen, do you know what I'm doing for you? You think money grows on trees? No, it's because I'm doing a good job for you. And nobody understands me. And then you come on the weekend, and they're like, you should love Jesus. You're like, shut up, I'm trying. When exactly should I love Jesus? And it's not that you woke up saying like, I hate God. That's not the thing. And if you did, whatever. Okay, but most of you are like, I do, but how in the world is this supposed to fit? And then I'm like, and we all ought to give back and shine our little light in this dark world. And you're like, whatever. I don't have time. Why? Am I evil? No, I'm overwhelmed. And all I'm saying is if we start here, you probably aren't going to make it all the way through the line. And there's going to be a couple things that feel the brunt. And I don't know if I'm just making this kind of stuff up. Have you ever met anybody who did a good job of serving themselves and a good job in their career, and their family felt neglected? Is that even possible? Have you ever met somebody who did a great job at these two, and they felt empty? They're like, why am I, it's meaningless. It's because it's backwards. The question of priority is who am I serving today? If I wake up today and say, Jesus, I exist to serve you. I want to love you well. You gave me my family. I want to love them well. I want to work hard, but I want to do it. I want to make an impact somehow. I want to make an impact in my life. And I want to work to be able to provide because I love my family. I want to work hard and do it as unto the Lord and not unto man. But God, I serve you first. And even if I never get to serving me, I'm going to be filled because it's called purpose. So here's what I want us to do. I want us to take that lesson from a dude who was overwhelmed. And what's crazy is everyone else quickly went about their business. I got to go tell my boss, I'm back. How many fingers do you see? Woo-hoo-hoo! Hire me again. I got to go find my family. That's not bad. But one dude woke up and said, are you kidding me? You healed me. I'm starting. I'm excited to see my family, and I'm excited to get a job. I'm excited to go back in the community. But time out, you healed me. Now, last thing I want us to say, then you can put your shoes back on. We're almost done, okay? But bottom line is this. There's two thoughts. One, I don't want to throw shade at Jesus because he's Jesus. But I got a difference of opinion in how you should heal people. Because it says that Jesus says to the guys, go. And they went. And on their way, they were healed. And I'm like, missed opportunity, Jesus. Because if I were Jesus and I was about ready to heal these suckers, here's what I'd have been. Okay, tomorrow, all 10 of you bring 10 friends each and meet me here at 10:10. Make sure there's a photographer. There's going to be a news release. This is going to be amazing. And I'm going to be abracadabra, shabam. Oh, shabam, shabam, shabam. I was worried I had just said that, and then I said it. Okay, abracadabra, shabam. And all of a sudden, they'd be like, what? Look at all these phalanges popping out of my palm. This is awesome. I got 10, I'm healed. And everybody would be like, who did that? And they'd be like, Jesus did. And I'd be like, thank you, thank you. Now, I want to talk to you about God's love for you, right? That would be a great opportunity. I would want to leverage this miracle because that's a miracle. And there's times God did that, extraordinary. And here's the last two things I want you to write in your notes. First is this, when God heals us through the extraordinary, or the supernatural. Guess what we call it? A miracle. What? I was sick. Boom. He just did it. I was broke. Go to your mailbox. A check for $1 million. Our marriage was on the rocks. Boom. We both filled in the right blanks at church, and now we're teaching conferences. Okay? I would fill in your dysfunction, and God can do it. I was addicted to drugs. Boom. Instantly set free. For 10 years, I was a Cubs fan. Boom, Cardinals, right? Whatever it is, right? I believe that God can supernaturally, extraordinarily heal you. I pray for it. I believe in it. That's awesome. And when he does that, we call it a miracle. Now, though, what do we call this? When God uses the ordinary to heal you. When he heals you through ordinary events, guess what we call that? A miracle. It's still a miracle. When he heals you supernaturally, it's a miracle. When he heals you through natural steps, it's a miracle. So guess what he said to these guys? Go on your way. Take a next step. And through your next steps, guess what's going to happen? You're going to look down one day and say, what? I'm functional. You're like, I'm up to my eyes in debt. You're like, just get 20 envelopes. Put enough cash in each one and just spend what you got. And 17 years later, you scratch off that last one and Dave Ramsey retweets you. You're like, it's a miracle. It's still a miracle. I'm just gonna start packing my lunch now. My marriage is on the rocks. So guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna serve my spouse. And I'm gonna serve her the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And as I keep taking these natural next steps, one day I look down and I say, man, I've got feelings in areas I've never had feelings before. God has done a miracle in my marriage. I love it when God does miracles, and I'm not even picky how he does it. And if you need a supernatural miracle today, I pray for it. But if you have faith for a supernatural miracle, I also hope you have obedience for a natural one. And when we combine the God who can heal with the God who speaks through obedience, miracles will happen. So let's get our priorities straight. Let's focus on God. Let's be the type of people that say, God, I'm going to turn my day in such a way. Every day, I point it towards you, and I'm going to take that step. And through natural minutes, God's going to turn a movement in our lives. So let me pray with you and for you. I know for some of you, that next step might be saying yes to Jesus. So right now, as we pray, God, I pray for those whose next step is to say yes to you, that right now you would begin to forgive of sin, and that they would start taking their next steps on the spiritual journey. And God, I pray that through their natural obedience to what you're doing in their heart, they will be able to say, man, I've been cleansed. I got purpose. I pray you would do that miracle now. Lord, I pray for those who next step is serving you throughout the day. God, that you would give us the natural steps to bring about supernatural results. How we thank you that you're a God who's patient and who's present. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.